reference. Thank you. However, we're going to bypass the introductory slides and change things up a bit. There were a few things that happened in the past week that prompted a change in approach. There were quite a few guest speakers who reached out to me and asked, what should they say? And there were some individuals who I'd never met who sent me emails and texts asking how do they attend the presentation. And there were some individuals who sent in write-ups and photographs and video recordings to share. I was getting a sense that, as Leanne Stanley said last year, this has become a thing. And this whole thing started in early 2020 during the dark days of COVID, and CORA were going insane in lockdowns, and we started collecting our history. Then we had the first presentation in November 2021 for 18 inductees. And it was a novel concept and a lot of work, and we did not know if there would be a follow-up. At the presentation in November 2022, there were another 6 stellar individuals inducted, and there were still nominees in the queue. We just ran out of time. At this presentation in November 2023, there are another 7 stellar individuals inducted, and there are still nominees in the queue. So we can tell you now that it is very likely that this will be a thing. In the first year, there was a destination, a goal. Research and recognize the athletes and builders and pioneers that shaped CORA and who had not been appropriately recognized. But in the second and third years, this became a journey of discovery, as each email and virtual interview and in-person conversations with members of the paddling community led to a realization that there were so many more individuals and stories that were still waiting to be recognized. And so a moment for our sponsors. So as Jan Shavery would say, these things don't just happen automatically. There are a lot of individuals who play a part in making these presentations happen. We would like to begin by thanking the audience who joined us to show their appreciation for the guest speakers and the inductees. We would like to thank the CORA Town Hall Committee. They are working behind the scenes to orchestrate these town halls like a Broadway theater production. They make sure the technology is working, and they publish the recordings, and they come up with these ideas for these town halls. We would like to thank the members of the CORA Historical and Awards Committee over the past few years who do research, fact-check write-ups, and review the Hall of Fame candidate bios to make an assessment as to whether the candidates have the creds. We would like to thank the inductees. They have taken the time via email and virtual interviews to provide details of people, places, events that were part of their lives and led to their achievements in the sport of outrigger canoeing. And we would like to thank the guest speakers. Public speaking is not for everyone. Showing of appreciation when these guest speakers who know or knew the inductees are willing to come forward and share their personal insights on the inductees. Now, we have a slide for each inductee that's supposed to be a greatest hits. It is difficult to condense a lifetime of achievements by an individual into our standard Canadian Outrigger Hall of Fame 2-page candidate bio. And it's near impossible to condense a lifetime of achievements by an inductee into a 15 bullet point slide. But the slides are there so that we have some talking points, and the Canadian Outrigger Hall of Fame bio for every inductee is posted on the CORA website for your review. We have provided a few slides with some background on each of our guest speakers, and not surprisingly, some of them are already Canadian Outrigger Hall of Fame inductees. I have notes. It's been a busy day. We will take the time to recognize each of our guest speakers so that you have an idea of who they are when they take the floor. At the end of our guest speaker introductions, we are going to highlight one speaker in particular. So here we go with our guest speaker introductions. So Eric, could you scroll down to our guest speakers? Yeah, keep going. Oh, stop there, please. Yeah, these are our Hall of Fame inductees this year, just in case we forgot to mention that. Ruth Madsen, David Hill, Nancy Bonding, Len Morris Jr., Linda Roberts, Norm McDonald, Leanne Stanley, and there's a link down there so you can go check out the website where we got all of their bios posted. But if we can scroll down another slide, Eric, please. Yeah, there we go. 3 pages of guest speakers. So I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly so you know who they are. Andrea Dillon, she was Water's Edge Sport Performance. She's in the Dragon Boat Canada Hall of Fame. 2002 Tahiti IVF Sprints medalist, and she was inducted into the CORA Hall of Fame in 2022, last year. Heather Taylor, 1994, 96, 98 IPCF Sprints medalist. Recently came back from Samoa as a 2023 IVF distance medalist. And she was inducted in the first year in the CORA Hall of Fame in 2021. Ron Williams, the younger. Apparently there's 3 Ron Williams. And I'm not sure how many of them we have here today. But Ron Williams, the younger, paddled with Ruth Masson and her daughters, Helena and Karina, back in the day. So it'll be interesting perspective from somebody who knew Ruth a long time ago. Hugh Fisher couldn't make it. 1984 LA bronze, K2 gold and bronze medals. Hall of Fame 2021. We have a nice little gift he shared with us. Wendy Ray Perkins. I don't know if she's going to speak. I think she might be hiding in a room because there's a huge gala happening at her place right now. She came into the Hall of Fame last year. Co-founder of Wainui Okanaka. We have Janet Davis with us, who's probably known Nancy Bonding forever. She collaborated with Nancy to bring the first OC6 to Ontario, co-founder of Mississauga Outrigger Canoe Club, and did the 2003 Molokai Nawahini with Wainui. Next up, on the next page, we have Karen Simpson, who's also known Nancy Bonding forever, and was part of that 2003 Molokai Nawahini crew by Wainui. We have Alan Thompson, and I don't know if he's going to make it because he's like 12 time zones away, but he provided us a video. He was the VCKC secretary, and he was the lead author of the VCKC 50 Years of Paddling publication, which has been an incredible source of material on the canoeing history, not just outrigger, but dragon boat, everything. We have Karen Malmquist, Calgary Canoe Club Outrigger Programs Executive Director, and a former Team Canada area coordinator. We have Donna Harrison. She's a Gibson's Paddle Club director and former Team Canada IVF rep. I'm not sure, I didn't go through all the names at the top there, but we have invited Uncle Leonard Kimakeo Kapohulehua. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he is the Hawaiian Outrigger Canoe Voyaging Society president, the founder of Kimakeo Foundation. He collaborated with Linda Roberts on a whole bunch of voyages, and he himself did a 1,650-mile Hawaiian archipelago voyage by canoe in 2008. James Hill, Latitude 48 co-founder. We just recently found out that he was part of a back-to-back Pailolo Challenge gold medal crew, and that's going to be one of our Cascadia articles coming up. We have David Hill, an inductee and a speaker, VCK president in the 1990s. He was with the CORA executive in the 90s. He introduced Outrigger to VCKC, and he's joining the Hall of Fame this year. We have Mahari McDonald, family member of Norm McDonald, and this is going to be quite interesting presentation by Mahari. I don't know if she's got Lisa McDonald with her, but this will be an interesting talk. We have Zoe Norcross with Comox Valley Racing Club, Hanaho Sports. She too recently gold medaled at Samoa, IVF distance, and was part of the first ever women's iron crew to do Molokai Nawahini, and we got a story waiting to write it up there. Melanie Kennard, also co-founder of Latitude 48. She too was a gold medalist in Samoa, IVF distance. In fact, I think we've got 3 or 4 or 5 of that crew here tonight. We might have to actually acknowledge them on the spot. And then we have Gordon Martinez. I'm not sure if he'll make it. He's down in Arizona doing another dam race. But we have John Richardson. Both of them are from Kikaha Okekai. John is a steersman extraordinaire, and I'm dying to hear what he's been able to collect from the fellow paddlers in the community. And I believe our last speaker will be Rita Morris, none other than Len Morris's mother. So that's who we've got on board. Quick check. Eric, can you tell if Uncle Kimokeo is here? He might be using somebody else's email address.
Yes, I am.
Sam?
Uncle Kimokeo is here.
Very good. Oh, this is wonderful. Now we get to do a little promotion for our town hall committee. So while interviewing Linda Roberts, we were aware that Linda and Uncle Kimokeo have had a very long friendship. And we asked if Linda would be interested in collaborating with Hawaii Outrigger Canoe Voyaging Society for a CORA town hall session on Hawaii voyages. And Linda said yes. And we reached out to Hawaii Outrigger Canoe Voyaging Society to ask if Uncle Kimokeo would speak for Linda. And would Hawaii Outrigger Canoe Voyaging Society, I just need to say HOCVS, be interested in collaborating on a CORA town hall session on Hawaii voyages? And Uncle Kimokeo said yes. So the CORA Town Hall Committee and Linda Roberts and the HOCVS may be the next CORA Town Hall session, so stay tuned. So right up until this afternoon, we were not certain who would be the first presentation, but I think we've sorted that out. We would like to kick off with Ruth Matson. Our game plan was to go Vancouver Island East, Vancouver Island East, Vancouver Island East, and finish up on Vancouver Island. We're going to, hopefully that plays out well. So Eric, could you, thank you so much. Tiny print, I know. Like I said, 15 bullet points, your life in 15 bullet points here. You can read that later. This is good. I didn't know who Ruth Matson was until about 2.5 years ago when I was talking to Heather Taylor, and she mentioned her as an influence. And I talked to Annie Bolding, and she mentioned Ruth Matson, and we kind of went on this research mission, and we finally found out who Ruth Matson is. We think we know who she is, and we did a write-up on it. One of the interesting people in her life is Hugh Fisher. Eric, could you scroll down to the next slide there? Yeah, this is tiny. This is really tiny. Hugh Fisher said that he would not be able to speak at this town hall, but he did send us some photos that meant a lot to him. There's some big names in there. We have 2 slides with 4 photos of Ruth Matson, white dress, red hat, in 1986, steering a Voyager canoe down the Kettle River over by Grand Forks in BC for the honeymoon of Hugh Fisher and his bride. The sentiment that Hugh Fisher wished to convey that he had most trust in Matson navigating his honeymoon voyage. It's likely that Ruth Matson has these photos somewhere on the wall of her home, and if she doesn't, we'll get them to you.
Oh my. Brings tears to an old girl's eyes, it does.
The white dress and the red hat, I mean, it just made it. Heather Taylor was invited and agreed to speak for Ruth Matson, but then found herself double booked. But she offered to do a video recording presentation. She might be here. But before we play this video, I would highly recommend that you have a box of tissues on hand. I watched this video and I went through a box of tissues. So Eric, could you cue up the Heather Taylor video? And I am not being facetious about the tissues here. Got no sound, Eric. The
As
meal,
a kid, I grew up on the shores of Departure Bay. Our home overlooked the water, facing south towards Newcastle Island and Departure Bay. I recall every weekend in the spring and summer watching the First Nations as they paddled their war canoe around Departure Bay from down Nanaimo Harbor to Newcastle Island and in front of our home. I would hear their deep, mighty hut-hos from across the water long before I would see them. And I watched in awe their power and cohesiveness as they paddled in front of our home. I really wanted to be in that canoe. Now, memories to me are impressions. They can be funny things. We remember a snippet or two, then build a story around it. This is my story of my introduction to Ruth. At one point, I saw a woman in one of those canoes, or maybe it was a women's team. I'm not really sure, but either way, that is where I believe I first saw Ruth Matson, and she made a huge impression on me. A decade or so later, fast forward, I'm paddling marathon canoe. Ruth Matson was a legend in the paddling circles. Paddling races like the Hyatt Fraser River race, the Similkameen race, paddling across the Sailor Sea 8 years in a row to raise money for the telethon. Just as a little aside, False Creek tried to paddle the Burrard canoe, outrigger canoe, across the Sailor Sea, and we swamped. So that just puts it in perspective for me. Ruth was on the first Canadian women's Molokai crossing, as well as doing many, many, many marathon canoe races across the country. This gets to the first time I actually met Ruth. It was the Rosedale Canoe Race, which is a windy course down the shallow Rosedale River. I don't remember much about the race itself, except that we, myself and my partner, Leanne Hodgkinson, at the time, beat Ruth and Kathy. Naturally, I was pretty ecstatic, feeling pretty proud of myself and Leanne, and also wondering how Ruth would take it. I think at the time I was too shy and too immature to approach her. However, in true Ruth fashion, she came up to me, held out her hand, and said, "Nice race, kiddo." And that still gives me goosebumps. Those words spoke a lot about Ruth and continue to define her. Ruth's paddling resume and what she has done in paddling is extensive. Her attitude has always seemed to be, well, let's just go do it. However, it is how she is as a person and a competitor that sets her apart. Ruth is strong, determined, super crafty, and also very humble. She is a fierce competitor and a matriarch. She has led by example. She reminds me to be kind, to be determined, and to just keep going. In life, it's others that help shape and make us who we are, and help us to be better people and better paddlers. Ruth has been a mentor, a guide, and a friend. Ruth is a legend, and I'm so glad she's been indicted into the Hall of Fame. It's truly deserved. Thank you, Ruth, from the depths of my heart for all you have done for me, for my family, for the paddling community, and for being who you are.
Oh my.
get those tissues out. I warned
Okay.
you. Yeah, I couldn't watch it a second time. I kid you not. I'm not too emotional, but I heard Heather's words, and there you go. So before you take the stage here, wipe your eyes. I think we have Andrea Dillon in the wings.
Sure. Yes.
And so,
Wow.
Andrea, that you have the floor, Andrea.
Thank you. Wow, that's I really have to follow up on a legacy unto a Heather Taylor. One of the things that Heather spoke to and what I'm speaking to, Ruth, is what you are to me is sustainability, commitment, passion, and you've given every paddler and continue to give us a legacy. And my one wish is that every paddler who comes across you and meets you has the guts, has the interest to say, "Hi, you're Ruth. Tell me about if you paddle much," because so many of us, we get into the sport, we think it's all about us and who's around us, and we forget that it's people like Ruth who have brought us to the point where we are. And so that, Ruth, leads me into, this is a saying, and this was given to me by someone several years ago, and it's a quote from Wind in the Willows. And what it is believe me, all there is, nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing around in boats. So says Ratty to Mole, and so do I say to Ruth. And while I got to know Ruth in '88, because I believe a paddler is one who does everything. And as you know, Ruth was a marathon paddler for years, and you raced with Mary Bays in the Women's Open in some race. And Mary Bays is the owner of Western Canoeing and still produces many of our C2s and marathon races, and they're our go-to people. And then Ruth came and joined us as our steers, as our False Creek women started that whole path to go over to Hong Kong and to the World Dragon Boat races. And did we have confidence? If you knew what the waters were like in that Hong Kong harbor, it was so comforting to know Ruth was in the back of the boat. And humble, absolutely, as we had all these waves come at us and the dirt and the garbage. Marathon canoeing, outrigger. You were part of that very first Molokai crew. You were part of the crew with Justine Barton and former marathon paddlers as well. Allison Hart and Cheryl Scribe. And I believe that was like 1990 where you did an outrigger race. And then now you continue on coming back as a medalist from the IVF distance. What you always do is you always reach out, embrace, and allow fellow paddlers to be the best and do the best. And you do it just because it's there in your heart and in your passion. And you are a legacy. And what I know is that your mentoring is going to continue for years. You will never give up. And thank you, Ruth Madsen. Always so special to me and such a mentor. Thank you.
Oh, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you.
So before we give you the floor, Ruth,
No.
we're checking to see if Ron Williams is there. Somebody from way back when. Ron Williams, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Well, then let's hear what you have to say, Ron. I'm dying because you asked me a million times, what should I say? What should I say? So what do you have for us?
Okay. I've been a friend and fellow paddler of Ruth's for over 40 years. In 1980, when I was 16, a mutual friend introduced me to Voyager canoe paddling. He was a member of the White Raven Canoe Club, and I started tagging along for their practices. And this is where I first met Ruth. It wasn't long before I was hooked and paddling became my primary sport. And I was joining the whole Madsen family at weekend race events. At that time, they drove a pickup truck, and I had to ride in the bed under the canopy with all the camping gear and paddling gear because there wasn't enough room in the cab for me. It was due to Ruth and Elle's passion for the sport and their willingness to include me in these family travels to the races throughout BC and beyond that I was able to develop my paddling skills. I took this generosity for granted at the time, but I know that if not for them, my life would likely not have included paddling, and that is hard for me to imagine. After a few years, I no longer needed a ride in the back of their truck, but that didn't change the time I spent with them at races and paddling for fun at home. Soon after that, I would be giving Ruth a ride to the races. Of the many events we participated in together, one that stands out is the Variety Club Telethon fundraiser. The
Yes.
club did this for several years. This involved a February paddle from Nanaimo to Vancouver, and needless to say, the weather didn't always cooperate in February. We had an escort boat for the paddle over, and this was our ride home. Everyone would celebrate with a beer on the trip home, and in Ruth's case, it was a strongbow cider. By the time we reached Entrance Island, just outside Nanaimo, most of us were seasick and were over the side of the boat barfing. After a few years, Ruth and a few others got smart and caught the ferry home. Another standout event I remember was the Hayak race from Hope to New Westminster on the Fraser River. We trained for hours a week over several months around the Gulf Islands in the lead up to this race. It was the longest race I'd ever done. It was 90 kilometers, but Ruth and the crew just took it in stride. I later realized Ruth was the first female in the race, but at the time I was oblivious. For me, she was just one of the other paddlers. The hours I spent with Ruth on the water are too numerous to mention, as are the races, whether they ended in victory or defeat. As memorable as the time on the water is the time spent off the water, such as participating in their New Year's Day fun run and sauna, which started at 9 a.m. sharp, regardless of any hangovers from the night before. This annual tradition went on for over 35 years. As well as great party hosts for many years, Ruth and Elle were avid dog breeders of Great Danes. I always appreciated invitations to visit with my family when a new litter was born. Ruth has been a mentor, coach, counselor, and at times a mother to me. In addition to being an accomplished paddler, she has been a lifelong champion of the sport, encouraging hundreds of people over the years to give it a try. I'm very lucky to have been one of her proteges and thankful to call her my friend. I look forward to many more adventures on and off the water with Ruth.
Well, Ruth,
Oh, dear. Yeah.
there you go. From your peers, your colleagues, your friends, words to let them know what you've meant to them.
Mm. For once, I'm speechless. Well, I think for all the paddling I've done, the friends that have gone with me have made it. You just meet such wonderful, wonderful people. And maybe that's why I kept doing it, because I keep meeting wonderful, wonderful people. But thank you.
Thank you. And one of these days we are actually going to meet in person, and I will get to say, Ruth, finally we meet. So we're going to move on to our next presentation. Ruth, you just get that box of tissues out, like I said, and you'll be okay. So next up, we have Nancy Botting from Ontario, Oakville, Mississauga. Quite the history there. I had the pleasure of interviewing Nancy Botting on Easter Day this year, Easter Sunday, and we talked for almost 2 hours, or she talked for 2 hours, and I just wrote and sent her back all my notes, and she corrected everything, and then we were able to pull together the story of outrigger in Eastern Canada. And throughout that session, she just kept mentioning names: Janet Davis, Karen Simpson, Sheila Kuiper, Wendy Ray Perkins, and I think we have all of them here today. Janet Davis actually sent us some photos, and I think she's got a story to go with it. So Janet Davis, would you care to go first? And we can scroll down to the photos there. Oops. Oh, Eric, you've got an old version.
Worst comes to worst, I can stick them up in front of the camera.
There you go. So Janet, tell us about yourself.
Okay, my name is Janet Davis, and I'm like Nancy. I'm a physiotherapist, and I've known her for I think pretty almost 30 years. So we've been friends for a long, long time. So I've been asked to tell you a little bit about the history of Nancy and outrigger paddling in Canada. So going back to the beginning, in 1991-92, I spent a year working as a physiotherapist in Kailua Town, Hawaii. There I joined Kailua Outrigger Club and competed in the sprint season there, and borrowed my teammates' OC1s every morning when I could to paddle before work. When I came back to Canada, that's Eastern Canada, there was no outrigger paddling to be seen in Toronto, so I competed in marathon paddling and dragon boat. It was there in the Toronto Island Dragon Boat Festival that I met Nancy. In fact, the first time we met, we were competing against each other in dragon boat. We continued to compete together in dragon boat, and we both went to the World Dragon Boat Championships in Hong Kong. As one lady was saying, we enjoyed the Hong Kong water as well. But I was still missing the outrigger paddling. So in 1994, I went down to Catalina and Lake Tahoe and paddled with my buddies from North Shore. But I really wanted to get Eastern Canadians down there. So I asked Nancy if when I came back to Canada, she would join me in 1995 for the Lake Tahoe Classic. And she was able to take time off work, and she came down to the Lake Tahoe race, and she loved it. She just raved about it. She went in the OC6 race on the Saturday and the OC1 race on the Sunday, and she was hooked. I carried on, went to Catalina and Catalina Island for that race. And when I came back to Canada, she had already started planning to get an OC6. We had met Donald Michelson down there, and he had a Force 5 OC6 for sale. So in 1996, I was training with the Santa Cruz team and did a few races like the Tahoe and Catalina and Kona and Molokai Nawahini. And Nancy wanted to have a Canadian team the following year. So we put together a team of ladies to compete in an existing race called the 32-mile Lake Ontario race. And it was there that I saw Nancy's true competitive spirit. I'd always known her as a very laid back, cool, easygoing person. But that morning in the States in Lake Ontario, and I don't know if you can see here, this is the morning of it. So we start in the States and you cross to Canada. We didn't even have to bring our passport. So, but anyways, in that morning, we forgot our spare paddle. And so we're sitting there at the beginning, at the start line saying, oh shit, if we drop a paddle, that's it, we're done. And so the police boat, who were 6-man guide team, came up to us and says, oh, we'll give you a spare paddle, but I don't know when we're going to get back because we'll be so far ahead of you. And so we're sitting at the start line, and we all look at Nancy, and Nancy smiles and she says, let's go, girls. And so we ended up winning that race. We beat all the men's team, including that team that said that to Nancy. And that's when I knew that laid back woman is a true competitor. Anyways, so besides coming first overall, that group of women ended up being some of our first paddlers when we bought the Force 5. Finally, in the spring of 1998, it happened. The first OC6 in Eastern Canada was delivered. Nancy and I had to deal with so many crazy logistics at the time. We had to deal with getting this damn boat across the border. There was a whole bunch of stuff that happened at the border. I think it was a strange new thing in Eastern Canada. I know you guys in Western Canada have it, but it was a strange thing here. And then getting a crew together, it was really tough because all of our all the paddlers in Eastern Canada dragon boated or marathon paddled or flat water paddled. So everybody had practice times at different times. And then getting outrigger paddles was a big deal, but it was all worth it. Nancy and I wanted to do it right. So in our inaugural race on Ho Okanaka, which was our first boat, was Liberty Cup in 1998. I was pregnant at the time, so Nancy and crew went without me. Luckily, I did not go, as on our first race, we hoolied in the lovely waters of New York City. So it was good I didn't go. And I think, do we have the ability for everybody to see those pictures, or should I just put them up I'll just put them up. So
Janet, I don't have access to those pictures. I'm so sorry. So go ahead.
Okay.
When you
right.
put it in front of the camera, it works just great.
Okay, here we go. So let's see. Let me get Nancy here. This is Nancy. Yeah. So Nancy is right there, fourth on there, and our this is the New York Liberty Cup race.
That's right about where we hoolied, right in front of the statue.
Yeah, you got to make it scenic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
after that race, we knew that we had done something wrong in the Hawaiian gods' eyes. So for the next year, we had to do something different. So as my background in Outriggers Hawaiian, we arranged to have a Hawaiian spiritual dancer to bless our Wainui boat. So we had this lady bless the boat in Hawaiian language, sing, dance Hawaiian. We put an authentic Hawaiian lei on the boat. And so this is her doing this Hawaiian dance. And you got to understand, this is the middle of Balmy Beach Club in Toronto, Canada. And you just have a bunch of tourists walking along and you can see everybody like, what the heck is that? And why is that lady singing to a boat? But anyways, it worked, because then we went to Liberty Cup for our second go at it. We had brought both a men's team that time and a women's team, and we did great. And there was no hoolies. So we did awesome. So, from there, we just grew and grew. It was called the Mississauga Outrigger Club at that time. It grew and grew into the Wainui Club. And I just want to say to everybody, the word for cheers is ke aloha. So you can take yourself off mute. And everybody, I'd like you to say on the word 3, we're going to say ke aloha, Nancy. 1, 2, 3. Ke aloha, Nancy. Ke aloha. And we're so proud of you, Nancy, for getting to the Hall of Fame in outrigger paddling, and you deserve it. Hang loose. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Janet. So many great memories, and it was so great back then to have you inspire us to do what we did. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
So we think we might have Karen Simpson here as well. Are you there, Karen?
Yeah. It says Robert's iPad just because that's my son. So can I go? Am I ready? You ready? Okay. All right. So obviously continuing with what Janet just said, and thank you, Janet, because I actually bought my first marathon canoe from you. So I don't know if you remember that, but so the long history of being involved with marathon and outrigger kind of ties hand in hand. Nancy and I first met in 1997, and that was just about when all of the commotion was happening with the outrigger coming into on Lake Ontario, and that was really convenient, because I think Nancy hired me as her assistant co-physiotherapist at the clinic, because what we basically did is arranged our patient population according to when we could get out on the water. So it was like, well, I don't think this patient's going to show up, so I think we can get out. So yeah, and it was very interesting that way. But as Janet mentioned, it wasn't easy being on the East Coast because most people had no idea what the outrigger was. The complication of not really having a home for the boat, and I think when you're on the West Coast, there was already a community and a culture happening there. Here, it was almost comical because we were walking around with this 42-foot boat, and there were like maybe sometimes we were short a paddler or two, and cell phones weren't happening back then as they do now. So it's basically is so and so coming, and you kind of keep timing it. Are they or will we have 6 paddlers today? Or are we going to have whatever? So it seemed like the opportunity to always set different goals. Nancy was always there to help rig the boat because most of us could provide her with the tires to lift the amas up, but none of us were sort of very good at figuring out how to rig it. So that whole sort of education process and understanding the culture of the outrigger, where it came from. There was just so many people that supported us from the West Coast, but also just just being a community here. And then to comment on a couple of scenarios, just to kind of give you an idea. Nancy was pregnant with her son, Alan, and we were steering the boat across, I don't know if it was Lake Ontario or something. It was around the island race. Anyway, there was a lot of one-sided winds. And when she got out of the boat, what she noticed was that the baby had shifted to one side. And her mom comes running up and saying, "You can't do that again." So there were a lot of interesting scenarios as we grew in the sport, but I think the friendships and the ability to grab different races never failed. We got together as a community here, and Wendy and Nancy and Janet and Allison Coolin and Diane O'Grady, some of the people that were sort of at the very Liz Lewick, everybody that was sort of at the very beginning of it, Sheila Kuiper as well. We kind of said, okay, where are we going to go next? Where are we going to go next? And as soon as we could find that race, there was a team that just consolidated, and Nancy always provided the incentives to work harder, always kept the boat together, helped us figure out the different strokes, and with her contacts on the West Coast really helped to build the canoe community here. And whenever today, when we go out and I see all the new paddlers and all the excitement that's happening at the Toronto front, and I try to keep people realizing that the basis of this whole community, or the first person that was involved in bringing the outrigger to Lake Ontario, was people like Nancy. I don't really mention Janet that much because I never see her anymore, but just having that appreciation of where the sport has come from and who's helped build it is it's incredible, actually. And Nancy and I have paddled many marathon races together. We've done Molokai several times. I think, Nancy, you were on that boat, the Junior Masters. We won it in 2007. We came in second in 2008. That wasn't a Canadian team. There was a whole mesh of different American marathon paddlers. But so sometimes, you don't get your name on the plaque just because it's across the border. And I think the time we did Molokai, wasn't that right after 9/11, and we had the boat that was actually the tribute to 9/11 with the American flag on it. So
I think it was the year after. It was the year after. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was all of the American flag and the tribute, and so that was pretty awesome that we had a Canadian team doing that. So yeah, I just to finish it up, just to say that you know, and outrigger is a sport, builds friendships all over the place, and Nancy, you've always been a guiding light for me, and even sometimes we laugh about it because when we've had to go to Liberty and some other place, she knows what I'm going to say. People would say, "So you're sleeping with your boss?" We'd be sharing a room. So
We vacationed together to go to a race.
yeah, I know. Yeah, so we always had to knock off work on the same day. So so anyway, thank you very much, and I couldn't be happier and more honored to be able to tell you how much you've meant to me in the last 27 years.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate it. It's great. I'm so happy for our friendship and everything that we've been able to do together, and I look forward to many more adventures with you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Karen, thank you for like running out all those names, because we record this so we can play it back. And because every time we have one of these Hall of Fame sessions, more names come up. So what you did just there was probably provide us a few more names to track down next year. So Sheila Kuiper, one of our first ever inductees, is there something you would like to say? Or are you content to be a spectator today?
Wait, sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. I just got my video back working. So yeah, I'd love to just give Nancy a shout out. I'm not going to say anything that either Janet hasn't said or Karen or Wendy might say, but honestly, Karen mentioned it right at the end. Everything that's happening in Ontario right now would not have been possible if it wasn't for the foresight of Nancy Botting, putting out her own money and just being driven to want to open up the sport here in the East, and building on that. And it's one thing to be a pioneer and get the ball rolling, but Nancy's one of those people that's still moving the ball forward. And whether it's helping to continue and build the Mississauga Outrigger Club, because even though that's where we started, it sort of, you know, moved into Oakville. But now, as Karen had mentioned, Toronto is bursting with all kinds of outrigger clubs, not just one at the, you know, Toronto Canoe and Sailing Club, but there's 3 or 4 in that small little period. And Mississauga, you know, Doug Tuddy's really driving something there, along with Nancy, who's going down at least once a week. So Nancy, thank you for not only being a pioneer and having that foresight and wanting to expand, you know, single blade, you know, sort of paddle sports, introduced me to it way back in 2003. I had no idea what outrigger was. I was some, you know, master flat water, you know, canoeist who had no idea women couldn't paddle C1, let alone, you know, I had just figured that out, let alone what this ocean sport was all about. And I must say, I was much better when I knew nothing about it than the more I tried to learn about it. You know, so don't overthink things. But yeah, when I think about my first experience with Nancy in 2003, when we, you know, I'm not sure who it was that couldn't go that year, but some circumstances happened. They needed a paddler last minute. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Trip, tracksuit, let me in. So I jumped on the bandwagon, and that kind of really started my outrigger sort of development, and seeing the connection there between outrigger and flatwater development as well. And yeah, it's been fantastic. And, you know, I'm going to share all these decades later, another experience coming up this February with Nancy as we head over to Takapuna and connect with another real icon in the paddling world, Mary Ellery, who's been teaching over in Thailand. That's the other thing. Like, it's so cool that you can be in different parts of the world and you can come together to race and reconnect. So you can bring your friends from home, and you can sleep and paddle and play with your boss, or you can get your friends from all over the world, and, you know, you can give purpose to that travel and reconnecting with old friends. So Nancy, thank you for all you've done. Thank you for all you continue to do. And I'm really looking forward to creating new memories out on the water with you this winter/summer.
Thanks,
Thank
Sheila. I
you,
really
Sheila.
appreciate that.
Well, Nancy, we did our best to get some friends to speak for you. Anything you'd like to say, and then we'll move on to our next inductee.
No, I just want to say thank you so much for this honor. I really, and recognition. I'm really happy to accept it, and it's great to be included with all of the other 6 other people today. And I just want to congratulate everybody that's being inducted, and thank you for this recognition.
Thank you, Nancy. Well, Eric, can we get our next slide up, please? Yes, next up is David Hill from Victoria, Vancouver Island again, BCKC president. The theme that I pulled from not only Alan Thompson and from the BCKC 50 Years of Paddling was a major agent of change. And I'm not going to steal Alan Thompson's thunder. Alan was, like I said, he's on the other side of the world, and I don't know if he logged in or not, but he is a soft-spoken fellow and very selective in his words. But he's also a historian and archivist, and presents his time with David Hill in a very structured approach, as if he was delivering a history presentation. And so, Eric, could you cue up the Alan Thompson video on behalf of David Hill here? And he's very quiet. We might have to turn the volume up really loud. So it'll be Alan Thompson for David Hill. How's it going, Eric?
Just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
1 second. Stop.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Alan Thompson, speaking to support the induction of Dave Hill into the CORA Hall of Fame. I am not an outrigger paddler, and I've never been a member of CORA, nor do I race.
Completely lost the audio, Eric.
It was during that time that Dave introduced the sport of outrigger racing and outriggers in general to the club. I must apologise for not having pictures to go with this, but my pictures happen to be in an external drive about 3,000 kilometres away, and I don't have access to it. And I also must apologise for my voice, which is trying to recover from a 3-week-old cold. Enough of that. Dave's introduction to organised paddling was in the University of Victoria's Kayak Club. He was a member of that club for a number of years and became its president, and he was therefore pretty familiar with the rivers of the island and on the mainland, since the main activity was whitewater kayaking. He joined the Victoria Canoe and Kayak Club in 1992 along with his wife Delia, and was immediately elected to the board of directors. He was elected to represent whitewater kayaking, which was a new program as far as the club was concerned. And it's noteworthy that Dave arranged for 2 of the most senior members of the club to propose and second him, which is evidence of good forward planning on his part. At the time Dave joined the club, the main activities were canoeing on the ocean, on lakes and moving water, and sea kayaking was beginning to hit its stride as a developing sport. Dave's first 2 years in the club were spent organising races, taking part in whitewater descents, and generally helping around the club and becoming familiar with its operation. And in 1994, he stood as president of the club. His pitch was that he admired the club's devotion to good teaching, safety standards, and the fact that there were many committed members who were having fun. You'll note that there was no mention of outrigging or of dragon boating in his promotional speech. First mention of outrigging in the records of the club occurs in 1994, when a member, not Dave, put a piece in the newsletter outlining the sport of outrigging and wondering if it was something that might develop on the West Coast. And the first time outrigging was mentioned in the club's board meeting minutes is when it was reported that a group of club members was putting together a proposal to try and borrow an outrigger canoe for the club. The next thing in the records is the arrival of said canoe, which Dave, having borrowed a trailer from UVic, drove up to Whistler, picked up the canoe, which is said to weigh 600 pounds, which seems high. But anyway, Dave was supposed to have done this on his own and then drove it back to Victoria. There, a group of interested paddlers got together and arranged to use the canoe to bring over a trainer from Vancouver to teach them how to stern, do rescues and so on, and to put up regular sessions for new club members, or club members new to this particular sporting discipline, to try it out. All of this, you will note, was done without any formal club approval or without any request for funds. The funds for the obtaining of the canoe and with the ferry ride cost about $600 even back then, and for bringing over the coach was all raised by the members of the club who were interested in outrigger paddling. By 1995, enthusiasm was sufficiently high that the outrigger group petitioned the club board to buy a new outrigger canoe, OC6. The club agreed to this with the provision that the outrigger group would raise half the funds. And this was done thanks to the enthusiasm and support of this small group of paddlers running yard sales, selling poinsettias, selling mugs, and almost anything else they could do to raise funds. And I would note that not only Dave, but Delia were key members of this group in doing the work to do this. Thanks to the arrival of their first son in January of 1996, both Dave and Delia dropped off the club's executive. There's one or two things that are more important than paddling. But they nonetheless had time to help support the establishment of the first Island Iron race, outrigger race, from Cabrera Bay in Victoria that summer. It was a fairly major enterprise since this was not being done from the clubhouse. It required the use of a public beach and a substantial amount of space, since OC6 trailers are not small and cars to park easily, and you had a large number of teams to support, provide food to, etc. But it was a great success. And Dave also managed to persuade the newly formed CORA to include Victoria on its list of Grand Prix races. I note that at the time there were 5 such Grand Prix races being held out of Vancouver, one in Vernon, one in Victoria, and wondered whether the board then had a predilection for the letter V, otherwise you weren't getting a look at it. I can't speak to Dave's contribution to CORA as an organisation, not being a member, and I suspect you all know his contributions there better than I do. But I do know that in addition to outrigging, Dave set up the first dragon boat team in Victoria, operating it out of the club. We didn't have a dragon boat, but he used the club's Voyageur canoes to train in, dragging bunches of car tires behind to simulate the drag of a real dragon boat. Those teams took part in the first Dragon Boat Festival in Victoria Harbour in 1994. So Dave could be regarded certainly as a father, if not surrogate father, of the dragon boating program at the club. Since then, the club has started up an outrigger program race, rather, early in the year called Wake Up the Gorge, and that has been running at the club since 1998. And the club has changed from a club that was mainly small boats, individual or tandem, to a club that is largely running team paddling events based on the clubhouse on the Gorge Waterway. And this change might have occurred if Dave had not been there, but it would have occurred more slowly and probably much less efficiently than the way he arranged it. And because of this, I'm very happy to support Dave's induction into CORA's Hall of Fame. Thank you very much.
So, David Hill, Alan Thompson gave quite the speech on your behalf. Would you like to share anything with us as our third inductee of the evening?
Yeah, it was quite a few busy years as president. I came from a different background since I'd come from whitewater kayaking and competitive paddling into a fairly sleepy canoe-only kind of club. And during my years there, I brought in the whitewater kayaking, brought in the sea kayaking, brought in an outrigger, marathon canoe. We hosted the Canadian Olympic team for a training site for a few years out of our club, and then also eventually brought in marathon canoe for that. So, and at the same time, I was elected president in 94, 95. Those 2 years, I also bankrupt, took the club to bankruptcy on that because the club needed a lot of renovations and stuff. So we did renovations, brought in, new boats, new things. So I was very much kind of a disruptor for the quiet, sleepy Victoria, but it was a excellent venue. It's an opportunity that I felt that couldn't be passed by, and just to get into things like outrigger canoeing. And I've yet to be over to Hawaii or anything like that. So my dream is to actually, when I retire, to get to Hawaii and actually paddle in warm water for once. That would be nice. My only warmest water I've been able to paddle in was the length of the lake race one year in September. And then also we did a long distance race from Vernon to Kelowna one year. But yeah, it was a good experience, and it was a good start. We had great people to start with, great enthusiasm, and we built it. And it's good to see lots of clubs in Victoria, very active, very competitive, and yeah, it was something worth doing.
David, thank you for sharing all that history with us. We are looking forward to hearing you speak on behalf of Norm MacDonald, I think 2 speakers away, so please stick around. Eric, could we get our next slide up, please? And I know this is going to be Linda Roberts.
I gotta go outside. Yeah. Not happening.
Sorry, folks, too many windows open. Just bear with me.
All right, then I'll buy you some time. So there we go. It was like pulling teeth trying to get stories out of Linda Roberts. She was like, no, I don't want to do this. But she did. She did. And she gave us a ton of material, reviewed all the material, fact checked it, proofread it, spell checked it, everything, got her bio perfect. And so we have 3 speakers we'd like to bring forward for Linda Roberts. And I'm not sure, Christine or Donna, if you'd like to go first. A preference?
Oh, I'm
Karen?
here.
Go ahead, Donna.
Okay. Hi.
This is Karen Monk. Yes?
Graham, who's first?
Donna, you go first. You're up.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations to all the nominees. It's great to see so many familiar faces. It's been a while. And to you, Linda, because you really deserve this. When I became aware of Linda Roberts from Calgary, I was on the CORA board, and I thought, as others did, that she was John Roberts' better half. But she's definitely the better half, but there's no relation between John Roberts and her. The Calgary Canoe Club, they've always been a dedicated club to racing. And I really believe it's due to Linda that they attend more races than a lot of other clubs who come from afar. Linda and I connected when I was, when we first got the bid to hold the IVF World Sprints in Canada, and we were working towards hosting it and getting things together. We needed someone who had experience in running sprint races, and it was John Roberts who suggested Linda. And I have to say, it did take a little while to convince her that this is something that she should do. She already had lots on her plate. So she took on race director for the 2008 Sacramento sprints. And that was kind of the beginning of her future in running international racing. Her ability to keep calm in every situation, they really helped the team stay organized and focused. And I really depended on Linda from that point on. She kept everything under control, no matter what was going on the race course and what paddlers were saying. She was always cool and calm and collected. And she was there to help with each of the Canadian time trials as well. So that was something else that we got added on as the Canadian sprints got bigger and bigger. I remember meeting Linda in Penticton to show her our proposed race course for the Canada World Sprints. It was on Skaha Lake, and that's where we were supposed to have the World Sprints, was in Penticton. And she wasn't convinced it was a viable course. She was right, it wasn't, but it was the location that was given on the original proposal. So I was trying to make it work. So it wasn't until a couple of months later, I don't know if Leanne's still with us, but she contacted me and she said, why are you using Skaha Lake when Calgary already has a sprint course set up? And I had no idea. I'd never been out there. So a quick trip to Calgary and meeting with Linda and the city of Calgary, it was done in a couple of days. Like, everything was arranged that the Calgary Canoe Club and that lake was going to be the new venue for the World Sprints. So they were all willing to help run the 2012 World Sprints, just like that. It was amazing. The resources that these people in Alberta have. So before 2010 New Caledonia Sprints, we had to persuade the IVF board to allow Canada to move the location from Penticton to Calgary. And Linda was not happy with me because she didn't have any information with her to defend this change in front of the International Outrigger Board. She was sure they were going to ask questions that she wouldn't have answers to, and she was really not comfortable with it. And I just said, you know what, don't worry about it. I know it's going to be fine. And so after the presentation, I don't know if she'll remember this, but they only had one question, and that was, is there an international airport in Calgary, and can Tahiti get to it? That's all they cared about. The rest of the racing, they knew was going to be run properly, and so they just wanted to make sure everybody could get there easily. So that was from Sacramento to New Caledonia. We were racing with a contingency of about 60 paddlers, and that's when the Canadian Open Women again placed first against Tahiti on their own territory there. And it was the president of the Tahitian Racing Federation. She presented Linda with a paddle for her success with Team Canada. That's a really big deal, especially to be honored from the Tahitian president and to honor Linda. So she has big kudos. The 2012 Calgary Sprints, it was a huge success. There was 250 Canadian paddlers. Linda and her club are responsible for that success without a doubt. Going forward, Linda wanted to be more involved with international racing, and she took on the director's position on the IVF board to help move the sport forward for the Northern Hemisphere, because it really is heavily attended in the Southern Hemisphere and not so much up here. So she really wanted to help move that forward. And I know she played a huge part in improving their race rules internationally. She sat on the board for a few years, and she's still helping to officiate all the world sprints with her expertise in running sprints. She is an amazing woman, and she's a force to be reckoned with. And I have to thank you for all that you've done for CORA and for Canadian paddlers. And yeah, I don't think we would be as far along in the Canadian success of outrigger paddling as we are with for sprints as we are now because of you. Thanks, Linda.
Cool. Thank you, Don. Karen, would you like to have a go at this?
Absolutely. I'm really proud to be here. Thank you so much, Graham. I will adjust my name to Christine Monkfist. Thank you so much for contacting me to speak on Linda's behalf. It is my privilege and pleasure to speak about Linda Roberts, a CORA Hall of Fame inductee, and to share just a little bit about how she came to receive this prestigious honor. Of course, I do suggest that you check out her bio on CORA's website, as there will be much more detail in there, including a few nuggets that I didn't even know. So she started paddling, as it says there, in the 1980s with the Calgary Canoe Club in the Sprint Canoe Kayak program. She competed in C4, C2, and C1. That was just the start of her paddling career, even before she knew about outrigger. Then she started coaching not long after that, C4, C2, C1, and I'm sure a few other things, kayak and other things as well, as long as our tinnies are still out there. And then she completed her physical education degree, NCCP level 3 coaching as well. As you can see, she had a really great foundation to get where she is today. You might know that she's had the great influence, as Donna mentioned, in the sport, being involved with CORA, the IVF, particularly with technical guidance and racing operations support, and of course, the Calgary Canoe Club. There's not much in the world of outrigger that Linda's positive influence hasn't touched. Her leadership and support of the sport locally is a testament to her commitment to outrigger, not only as a competitive endeavor for participants, but to be inclusive for everyone. And Linda, of course, was instrumental, as Donna mentioned, in bringing the world's outrigger sprints to Calgary in 2012 and making that event a resounding success. While Calgary is very fortunate to have a really great club, it wouldn't be that way without Linda. She's been welcoming the sistership cancer survivors to the sport here in Calgary for cross training, and more importantly, healing and achievement for this group. So you can see the inclusivity there. She's been key in ensuring that the Calgary Canoe Club also has the equipment needed to support our outrigger programming. So ranging from V1s to OC1s and OC6s, including some really nice unlimiteds with help from others, I'm sure, and making sure that they travel safely to where we race. No small feat. When races involve hauling 3 or more OC6s plus small boats across the Rockies, we've had some interesting trips. Her leadership has led many of us at the Calgary Canoe Club, including myself, to multiple adventures across Canada, North America, to Maui with Uncle many times, Europe, and the South Pacific, just to name a few places. As you might suspect, we can't paddle year-round here in Calgary. Linda also leads the best training program on and off season for her outrigger members. This has made a world of difference for everyone who participates. I must admit, though, a minute can seem really long in our core sessions at the end of our dryland workouts. I've known Linda personally for more than 15 years, and I'm proud to say that she's my great friend and mentor. We've competed together, led together, and traveled together. And I personally learned so much from her. She was there in Sacramento, 2008, for my first international competition. And from there, she's made such a difference with the IVF for all competitors since then. We had a blast in Tahiti when I was area coordinator then, and she volunteered with the race operations on the water for the entire event, ensuring that the races and starts, especially those starts, were stellar. One of my favorite memories paddling with Linda was crossing the Alenuihaha Channel from the Big Island to Maui, and I was sitting seat 5 as she steered. What a great experience. I also know that she's not much for the limelight. So without much ado, it's my great pleasure to speak a little on behalf to honor my great friend and a great support to the sport for everyone here, and thank her here today as an inductee to the CORA Hall of Fame. She's very deserving of this honor. Thank you.
Well done, well done.
Nicely done, Christine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on board to speak. Uncle Kimo Kale, and would you like to share a few words on behalf of Linda Roberts?
Kalei maela o kaulai ke gai ke malama lama o ni ha wa mali e pa kai no baela ke no maela he na hala una we ai ke kai no na we ha hala no puna ka bahine no kalua no ikila we ya. Mahalo for allowing me to speak in behalf of Linda Roberts. This lay I present to her when she first arrived more than 20 years ago on the island of Maui. Giving this lay to Linda was giving the lay of entrustment. Now I give it the lay, Linda. I entrust you with our heavens, our ocean, and our land. And when Linda arrived in Maui, she was really intrigued about the culture, and she wanted to know more about the culture. And since then, we've shared a lot with Ohana, Nakava'a, no Calgary Canoe Club, na Ohana Nakava'a, Canada. She's always made sure that when Uncle Kimo Kale had a guest from Canada, that we were to introduce the culture of Hawaii. And this is one of the ways that we presented all the lanes to many, many of her Ohana, and greeting them and trusting them like Linda. So Linda, our uncles met many years ago, and we had been sure that she always engulfed the culture. She said, I really, really want to learn about this. And so since then, Uncle's been taking Linda, like the previous speaker before me, from the island we call Mokukeawi, Hawaii, to Maui on the Alenuiha'a. She's done that several times with Uncle Kimo Kale. But besides that, we've done Koalawi, we've done Lanai, Molokai, and Oahu, and the island of Kauai. With that, Linda was to learn Hemoku Kawa'i and Kawa'i Moku. There's an island in a canoe and a canoe in the island, and we're all in the same canoe. And she came and learned Ao is the tide, Molokai Ao is the current, Nalu is the wave, Kamakani the wind. She learned Napoi Kalani, the people of the heaven, Napoi Kamawana, the people of ocean, Napoi Kuno, the people of land, and how the all the big canoes from one place to another. I really, really want to thank each and every one of you for having Linda Roberts as a CORA Hall of Fame. And talking about Roberts, the other Roberts is the Kupuna. He's an elder. And he's really happy tonight to know that Linda is carrying on the culture, preserving the culture. She's preserving the culture, she's preserving the environment, and she's preserving inclusive culture. Being that she's on the IVF board, she's gone all over the planet, all over the world, and she's admired each one's culture and made sure that they always was recognized as the indigenous people of that country. When we went up to 2012,
How's it going, Eric? Did we lose our audio?
I think we may have lost the speaker at that point.
Well, hopefully just his voice.
Right.
Hello?
Oh,
Hang on. You cut out on us.
all
So-
good. Thanks, Uncle.
Okay, Linda.
Yeah, Linda's connection is strong. So Graham, I think let's invite Linda just to say a few words.
Agreed. Linda, we've tried to round up some people who know you very well to speak on your behalf. So say anything you would like to say.
Just thank you. Nice there. It's funny how I have a different memory of certain things. Donna Harrison, maybe I'll send you some notes after. Fun, hey? Like, I don't know how Leanne and Len feel, but I feel old. So I guess maybe it's time to retire now, this Hall of Fame thing. But awesome job, guys. It's really nice to recognize everybody. Good job. For me, just thank you. And again, I think to touch on what Christine said, it's all about the club, like the people that we have in Calgary, how we've been able to move forward and just lend support, and that's what really makes it kind of roll for us there. So anyways, I'll keep it short. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Linda. So Eric, next up is Norm McDonald, and we have 3 speakers for Norm. Yes. Norm is a posthumous induction. He is one of 5: Jackie Weber, Rick Newey, Peter Ferran, James Van Nostrand, and Norm McDonald. I'd like to ask David Hill to speak first on behalf of Norm. They've known each other forever. And David, are you comfortable with this?
Yep.
Take it away. You have the floor.
Okay. If you can see my background, this is Norm on the Cheakamus River, 1986 Canadian Nationals. I met Norm probably about 81, 82. I was a novice paddler, and he kind of took me under his wing, and we paddled many, many times and spent a lot of hours on the water. He helped me organize and get the couch and slalom kayak race onto the BC Whitewater list of mandatory races to attend. And that the one thing about Norm that I always remember is his smile. Just so huge all the time, friendly. And the other thing about Norm, competitive, very competitive. When we were on the start line, it was serious from end to the beginning to end. But always helpful, always very technical, took you under his wing, pointed out little small details for you on that. We kind of I ended my whitewater career in about 1990 with a protruded disc and that. And so I was kind of slowing down and in the recovery stage when I joined the BCKC. And at that time, I didn't even know the club existed. Norm and I were practicing underneath the Telecom Bridge one day, riding in some holes, doing enders and rolling and that. And I used to change in the parking lot next to the pub that was next to the Telecom Bridge, which was kind of the cowboy biker bar in Victoria. And they were being torn down to build a condo. And I said to Norm, I said, where am I going to change when the parking lot's gone? He goes, well, you could join the BCKC. It's just up the gorge. And I went, the what? And so anyways, that's how we got into the BCKC, or I got into BCKC with Norm. And then about 93, Norm and Gord Oliphant started this kind of conversation about outrigger canoeing and how it'd be nice to, paddle warm water for once, and got us onto that. There was the Burrard out there. It could be a loaner for a club starting up. And so in 94, when I became president, I started looking around, and Norm and Gord got me in contact with Sharon Morningstar up in Whistler, and I went up there, grabbed the Burrard, came back, and Norm and Arpad and Gord were some of the few members that showed up. So it was about 5 of us taking that Burrard off of the trailer and putting it into the water and rigging it for the first time. We didn't really know how to rig a boat. We'd been over to Lotus a couple of times and did some races, and Gary Menzel and others there showed us how to rig a canoe. So we rigged the Burrard. That was kind of late October. So the first paddled all winter, and one of the things on the gorge, it gets very dark, and we have this bridge called Craigflower Bridge at the time, and you go past these pilings in the bridge, and we only had enough room, maybe about a foot on either side of the Ayaku and the hull to go through. So it was a very narrow passage. And Norm was always insisting that I I could be sterning, but to be a good sternsman, we had to go through that passage at full speed. And we would do that several times in the dark and the rain, and it was always nerve-wracking for me to get us lined up and go through that dark underneath the bridge. And then one night I messed up, and we got too close to the piling. We hit the piling, over we go, and we hoolied. And we're in the water. It's freezing cold, February. I had neoprene shorts on. Norm and everyone else just had the normal paddling gear from no neoprene, no PFDs. Luckily, the water is kind of shallow, so we flipped the boat up, but we couldn't flip it up underneath the bridge, so we had to push out in deeper water. So now we're swimming, get the boat upright. And I've been the only one in the boat that ever hoolied before. And so I said, once it's upright, I said, okay, why don't you jump in, start bailing, and then the rest of you just sit on the ama, and then we'll get in and start bailing. Well, nobody heard that, and everyone jumped in, and we hoolied again. So we finally got it straightened up, get out paddling, get the buckets going, and then we realized none of us were hanging onto our paddles. So all these dark black carbon fiber paddles floating on the gorge in the dark, and we're looking sideways in the light, and we find the paddles, eventually get back to the clubhouse, and we're standing in the clubhouse warming up, every one of us shaking away. And then Norm looks at the group and he goes, maybe that hoolie practice is a good idea. So just kind of warmed us up. Norm went on. We kind of, I concentrated more in kind of work and got out of paddling for a while, started concentrating marathon canoeing. Norm, meanwhile, went around Victoria, joined a lot of different clubs, and he was instrumental in just bringing the joy of the sport to everybody. Get out there, smiling all the time, words of encouragement. Everybody that knew Norm just, loved his smile, his warmth. He was great guy, and very great to see him inducted into the Hall of Fame here. Okay, thank you.
David Hill, thank you so much. The words of a friend, a lifetime friend. Next up is going to be James Hill, no relation to Dave Hill. But it was James Hill's speech at the Lotus Iron in 2022, shortly after we lost Norm, that kind of lit a fire that we needed to recognize him. So James Hill, would you care to share some thoughts about Norm?
Sure, thanks, Graham. I have to kind of admit that there's probably many other people who are closer to Norm than I was over time. But it wasn't sort of until he passed that it occurred to me how much of an impact he had on this community and myself in particular. And so I just, going back to what Dave said, it's very much similar to what his comments were. Norm's smile, his kind of laugh, he's always laughing. The competition point of view, I remember many times being out training with him, and we'd be out on the wide ocean in our outrigger canoes, and his boat would just be sitting there beside mine, tapping away, hitting me, and I could never figure out why. With all of this room, he would just be right there beside me, hitting my boat. And it's because he was just wanting to compete with me over and over and over. And it, really was a situation where he was helping to make me a better paddler. I remember from an athlete point of view, some memories I have of when I first started doing outrigger canoe, him paddling with river rats and being that one team we just couldn't beat all the time. I remember traveling home from Gibson's after the national championships with this giant honkin' trophy with his name on it because he just won the race and he had to leave right away. And we brought the trophy home for him. I remember being in Australia with him when he was Canada's V1 representative for his 60s men in racing. I remember, sitting in the Timberlake campground after Downwind Champs in the Gorge one year when he was talking about this race he had where he lost first place for his age category by about 5 seconds, and how he regretted not pushing himself just a little bit further, even though he had been so close and was right at the edge of his limits already. So all those things from a competitive and paddling point of view, but I have to say that my biggest memories of Norm are from off the water, more than anything, and just how, you know, prevalent he was in our community in a very sort of quiet but unmistakable way. He wasn't a big, you know, achiever like some of these people we've said as far as their big achievements, but he was always there. You wanted to go for a downwind run, Norm was there. You know, you wanted to go do marathon canoe, Norm was there. And I have to say, I tipped with Norm marathon canoes more than once, in very cold weather most of the time. I remember seeing that photo from the VYPC, the Victoria Youth Paddling Club. It was a junior dragon boat team, and they had these green T-shirts on that were Canada Dry because that was the sponsor. And it was pretty much literally 18 kids, about 15 years old, and Norm, who is very definitely not a 15-year-old kid, because he just wanted to contribute and step in and help those kids out and get them a chance to race. I remember going down to the gorge one time with one of our younger paddlers, and Norm took him under his wing and literally like kept him in his campground, made sure he was fed, made sure he got to go on downwind runs and was safe all the time. And that's kind of what Norm was always just all about. You know, this sport is really primarily it's about the community. That's sort of the underpinning of even the competitive sports. And Norm was just all about community. He was always part of it. He was always giving up himself. He was always there to give you his time, to contribute to your development, to contribute to your just your experience. And many times, you know, he would sit with me and just chat about paddling or about life or about anything that was going on, his theories. You know, I can still see him paddling up and down the gorge with his crazy technique, with his ama bouncing up and down, because he just thought what he did was the best thing ever, and he would just never change. And you know, we're really going to miss Norm a lot. He was really a big piece of this Victoria paddling community, and his loss will be felt for sure. You know, one of my favorite poems is by Purdy, and you know, the poem is the best and the worst of everything is to love and not forget. And I certainly won't forget Norman soon, and I'm really happy to see him being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
James, thank you. Beautiful words. We have Mahari McDonald here, and maybe Lisa. Would you like to share anything about Norm or accept on his behalf?
It's Mari. Hi.
Mary, hello.
Mari, yeah. Lisa and I sort of collaborated on a little speech for Norm. So before I begin, I'd just like to say Norm was a great guy. Norm was born in Grand Prairie, Alberta in 1954, so you may wonder how a boy from the prairies got into whitewater kayaking. That all came about when he moved to the Yukon in 1980. He belonged to the outdoor club, and his friend Sue took him out on the river. He was hooked immediately. One of his highlights, one of his highlights from that time was paddling down the Colorado River. Norm wasn't much of a swimmer, and as a beginner paddler, he spent a lot of time upside down in the water. For the sake of survival, he learned very quickly how to roll a kayak, with and without his paddle. He later commented to Lisa that paddling was the one sport he was perfectly built for. He had skinny hips, wide shoulders, and wasn't very tall. He was also a bit of an adrenaline junkie, an example of which was when, under the guise of training for waterfalls, he got his brother-in-law Bruce to push him off the Riverdale Bridge into the Yukon River in his whitewater kayak. Not once, but twice. He told Lisa the next day he must have slept wrong because his neck was sore. I believe Lisa put her nurse's cap on and set him straight on that score. The other extremely important event that took place in the Yukon is that he met Lisa. Both his love for Lisa and his love for paddling lasted for more than 40 years. Norm and Lisa then traveled around New Zealand for 6 months in 1982, with Norm going down rivers and Lisa riding horses. When they returned to Canada in the summer of 1982, they settled in Victoria. Lisa told me that one year Norm was the sole member of the Yukon team at the Canadian Whitewater Championships where he met Dave Green. When the decision was made to move to Victoria, Norm phoned Dave and introduced himself as the cute little redhead from the Yukon. Fortunately, Dave remembered that cute little redhead and offered them a place to stay. After a few years, Norm and Lisa started a family. They had 3 children, Julie, Anna, and Greg. Norm loved being a father. He managed to combine fatherhood and paddling by taking the 2 girls canoeing on the gorge with him. One was in a cooler, one was in a laundry basket. They both had life jackets on and had umbrellas for sun protection. Julie commented once that while other kids were at the playground with their dads, they were at Thetis Lake learning how to roll a kayak. Norm and Greg shared a love of hockey. He was very involved with the team while Greg was playing. Norm played hockey when he was younger and enjoyed watching hockey as well as boxing and wrestling. He also loved Westerns. If there was a Duster on TV, he would watch it even if he'd seen it a dozen times. Norm has always been a self-starter, a jack of all trades with an entrepreneurial spirit. In Grand Prairie, he and my brother Sandy both built spec houses, which they later sold. Norm had many jobs. He worked in the Arctic on the rigs and doing carpentry, laid flooring, worked for Xerox, and spent much of his life as a salesman, selling everything from furniture to windows. He also owned a few businesses. In Grand Prairie, he owned a waterbed store called Dusk Till Dawn, which he sold when he moved to the Yukon. In the Yukon, he started a furniture repair and refinishing business, which he called Professor Furniture. He started the same business in Victoria and ran it for quite a few years before he sold it. Later in life, he bought and ran a stucco company and an insulation company. I can't speak about Norm without talking about his sense of community and his kindness. Norm was one of those people that when he asked, "How are you?" would actually listen to your answer and ask follow-up questions. He was truly interested in what other people had to say. He was a great listener. He told me about one of his friends who was suffering from depression. His way of supporting his friend was to first listen. Then when his friend finished speaking, Norm said, "Tell me one small thing you want to accomplish. When you've done that, come back to me." When his friend came back, he said, "Okay, now tell me another thing you want to accomplish." That was Norm's approach to tackling difficult situations, one step at a time. He was able to share that ability with his family and friends. I've heard several people in the paddling community refer to Normie's paddling tips, where he would give people a couple of things to work on in a positive way without overwhelming them. He loved to coach anyone, young or old, who was enthusiastic about paddling. Norm was also very supportive of his friends in the Eckankar community. He would drive people to meetings if they were unable to drive for any reason. Some of them he ended up driving for years. A couple of them got to be really good friends, and he would take them out on Sundays for a drive and sometimes a burger and ice cream. Now, the paddling community has been a huge part of Norm's life. He was a member of VCKC for almost 40 years. He went from whitewater to flatwater canoe and kayak, then on to marathon and outrigger racing. He's enjoyed many paddling experiences and nurtured many friendships over the years. One of his best friends from VCKC, Ron Williams, apparently senior, introduced himself to me as Norm's paddling brother. I would like to read a message from Ron as he is unable to attend today. Norm was a great friend who I have had the privilege of knowing for over 40 plus years. Part of our relationship encompassed racing, training, repairing boats, and loving the sport of canoeing. As a fierce competitor in a 6-man race or a partner in a tandem, he always had a positive and supportive focus for himself and his teammates. When coaching either beginners or fellow competitors, he had the special gift of looking for and finding the best in others and sharing it in a constructive and positive way. It did not only apply to canoeing. I also shared many hours repairing both boats and paddles and helping with renovations around his house. He was always listening and open to new and innovative ideas on how to tackle any project. He was a loving, kind, and caring person, a true gentleman, and a dear friend. Ron. Norm had a great sense of fun. He loved a good water fight, which he always seemed to win. So there's one story I would like to share about a particular strawberry fight. It's the only time I've heard of where Norm was bested. The cast of characters included Norm, Lisa, Lisa's sister Heidi, and her cousin Sarah. They were out picking strawberries when a strawberry fight erupted. Afterwards, they got into 2 separate cars, and Norm thought the fight was over. Well, Sarah managed to lob a nice, juicy, ripe strawberry through Norm's open window and nailed him on the side of his face. It was stuck in his glasses and dripping down his cheek. Well, the chase was on. To my knowledge, he never managed to get back at Sarah, even though he made several attempts. She is one of my heroes. Norm was always keen to learn new things. This extended to alternative medicine and therapies. As his unwitting guinea pig, I became familiar with some of these as well. Those of you who have known him for many years may remember his forays into One Brain, Touch for Health, and the somewhat famous and ineffective eye exercises, to name a few. Norm also had a keen sense of humor. He loved puns. When Lisa brought their first dog home from the SPCA, he named her Jenny, Genny, because she was a generic dog. When his kids were fighting and slamming their bedroom doors, he told them that the doors must be broken, otherwise they wouldn't slam. He removed the doors and took them to the shop to repair them. It took about a week for diagnosis and repair before the doors were reinstalled. I have a lot to thank my big brother for. Norm was the oldest of the 4 of us. As a brother, I always felt he had my back. He moved out of the house when I was 5 years old. At that point, he could have cut ties and gone out to live his life. Instead, he made a point of getting to know and keeping in touch with his younger siblings. Sorry. He worked with our brother Sandy in Grand Prairie. When he moved to the Yukon, Norm flew my sister Elizabeth up for a visit, and when he moved to Victoria, he flew me out for a visit. He also encouraged me to move to Victoria and help me settle here. Norm was always available when I had questions or needed advice. I also have him to thank for my introduction to paddling in this wonderful paddling community. He was someone I looked up to for many reasons, not the least of which was his ability to overcome challenges and move forward. He was a very positive person. As a competitor, Norm was very humble about his accomplishments. I did hear about a couple of big highlights. One was in 2014 when he won the CORA National in Gibsons. The other one was when he went to Australia representing Canada in 2019. Norm worked hard, played hard, and made a good life for himself and those fortunate enough to be around him. Thank you very much for honoring him.
Now we know who that character was over on your shoulder moving around a lot.
Yeah.
That was wonderful, Mary. And I might actually ask you to send me those notes so we can add that to his bio online.
Sure.
Well.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. Eric, next up is Leanne Stanley, and she's in Hong Kong right now, somewhere. So we have 2 locals to speak for her, Zoe Norcross and Melanie Kennard. And I really can't speak to the sequence here. Zoe, how about you go first? Does that sound good?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have 2 snoring pugs beside me, so if you hear weird breathing noises, it's my dogs, and sorry about that. All right, Leanne. Is Leanne with us right now, or is she coaching? I guess she's coaching.
I'm here. Here's everybody. We're at Lana. Everywhere.
Woo! Leanne, congratulations on the results of your slaying the dragon yesterday, and being the hotspot winner for yesterday's race in Hong Kong. That's amazing. And second place overall. Good job. All right. Okay, so yeah, I've never really been someone that's good at remembering details like dates and chronologies, but I'm a lot better at remembering memorable moments and events and the way that people make me feel. And so, yeah, Leanne has a paddling resume that pretty much eclipses most other Canadian outrigger paddlers. I'm not going to talk about her accomplishments today because, yeah, there's lots of places you can go online to see all the incredible results that she's had from paddling. But instead, I'd like to talk about what an amazing person she is, amazing friend she is, and how her passion inspires paddlers all around the world like a ripple that just keeps traveling and spreading around the globe, gathering momentum along the way, like exactly like what she's doing right now in Hong Kong, which is just fits so perfectly to what I'm talking about. I think the first race I did with Leanne was a Molokai crossing. And at that time, Cheryl Scribe, who I had previously done some pretty big international races with, kept talking about some girl named Stanley, who she had raced with and they had won Kona with. And it was Stanley this, Stanley that, Stanley. I'd never met Stanley, but based on what I was hearing, I was feeling kind of intimidated. But first impressions of Leanne helped to ease that intimidation because I could just tell that she was super keen, friendly, and she was literally just bouncing up and down with genuine excitement. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of people, myself included, have some kind of personal challenging aspect about doing big races like Molokai. Everybody's got their thing. For some people, it's seasickness. And then they're all stressing about, will the wristbands or the ginger candies do the work? Or should I take the Dramamine? Or will the Dramamine make me too tired and drowsy? For myself, I get worried about whether I'm going to be able to relax enough to pee mid-channel, but that's another story. Most of us tend to fret about these things out loud with our teammates as, you know, all that nervous anticipation builds before the race. But then we have Leanne with her type 1 diabetes. You know, there she is racing her ass off, flinging herself joyfully into the ocean during water changes, climbing back into the escort boat, casually checking her blood sugar levels in an escort boat that's just slamming and lurching around in the huge seas with salt water soaking everything through, just doing what she needs to do to stay healthy and being so low key about the whole thing that everybody else who is worrying out loud about whether they should drink that extra Red Bull or not just doesn't even notice the complex, like critical medical calculations Leanne is carefully and silently making to keep herself in top form for the 66-kilometer race. After this particular race, ironically, the next day, I think this one was in 2011, I met up with my former advisor from the University of Hawaii at his office, and he told me that his 17-year-old son had just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and they felt like that he just had his life taken away from him, and they just didn't even feel safe going out paddling in Kailua Bay in front of their house anymore. And yeah, when I told him about Leanne, this kind of relief came across his face, and his son's diagnosis took on a way more positive light. Leanne is just such a phenomenal role model for the millions of people out there with type 1 diabetes, just proving so gracefully that it's possible to be one of the best athletes in the world in your chosen sport. But it's not just about her success as an athlete with type 1 diabetes. It's like her matter-of-fact way of taking very challenging situations in stride. So she's such an amazing role model for all of us. It's just this attitude of just do what you need to do and get on with it. And for that, I mean, it's ever since, you know, paddling with Leanne in her 20s, that has really had an impact on me and how I approach my own challenges in racing scenarios. One of my other earliest moments of Leanne was from when she attended one of the downwind canoe camps that Rick and I were running when we lived on Maui in the early 2000s. I think at that point, Leanne was relatively new to downwind paddling, but you have never seen anyone more absolutely all in than she was. She was just prepared to absorb every last molecule of this experience. She had come off the water with a smile so huge, just again, like bouncing around and always ready for more. After a Maliko run on an OC2 with Rick, I remember, so Leanne and Rick run the OC2 together, and he came up to me afterwards and he was like, holy shit, paddling OC2 with Leanne is like paddling with a really strong dude. And he was so impressed, but not just by her power, but by her passion and enthusiasm and her hunger to sponge up everything she could learn. So one of the things I love most about Leanne is her passion for supporting and inspiring and encouraging paddlers, spanning every level of experience and skill from novice to elite, but particularly her passion around supporting those who are struggling with a lack of confidence. For many years, I've watched her build coaching programs around supporting those who have dreams of doing cool stuff like downwind paddling or downwind races, but are too intimidated or feel incapable or just don't really know how to start. And I just really love seeing her solid support for women, because in so many of the cases, it's the women who are feeling intimidated being in groups with men or whatever. But Leanne has just really dedicated so much energy in that direction. And she has a real gift for getting that progression of knowledge and skills just right, so that everyone who wants to can achieve their goals and come out of her coaching events just feeling so excited about their growth achievements and just fired up for more. And it actually reminds me a lot of what my late husband, Rick, used to bring to outrigger canoe coaching, and how he really also thrived on supporting the underdogs. So yeah, this is exactly what we need in Canadian paddling right now. We just need people like Leanne out there helping paddlers of all abilities to achieve their goals and make their dreams come true. And the work that Leanne is doing leads to growth in the sport and huge increases in personal health and well-being and stronger and healthier communities. After losing Rick 10 years ago, I hung up my paddle to focus on raising my daughters. But okay, I hope I don't cry here. But in 2022, when I heard that the World Long Distance Championships were going to be in Samoa in 2023, I wanted to try to make it on the national team. Not only did I miss racing, but I love the idea of taking my daughters to the place where their father's family came from. But the problem was that I knew I had a really long road ahead of me to get back in shape after taking such a long break from paddling. And I had also just received some troubling medical conditions, and I had a huge level of insecurity around my ability to ever really be good enough to be able to race at an elite level ever again. So what did I do? I reached out to Leanne and confessed that I just wasn't sure if I was going to be able to put in the necessary work to get to where I needed to be. But in her typical no bullshit, no fluff kind of way, she simply said to me, she said, "Girl, you were born for this. Just get out there and paddle." And coming from Leanne, those words really carried a magical dose of inspiration that I don't think I would have felt had they come from anyone else. So that is a true grit gift. It is her calling. And it's so exciting to see her taking steps to make this her career. Being on the World Championship team in Samoa with Leanne this summer was a dream come true. Being in a canoe with Leanne is pure magic. I feel so fortunate to have had the numerous extraordinary racing experiences I've gotten to share with her. And I'm so excited that she's making Comox her home base in the near future. Because wherever she goes, Leanne brings fun, adventure, camaraderie, and growth from which the rest of us Canadian paddlers all benefit. Love you forever.
Zoe, what you just did there was why we do these presentations, because those bios, they're just stats. They're numbers, there's dates, it's chronology, it's history. But what Zoe just did was tell you what Leanne brings as a person to the sport. So Zoe, thank you for sharing that. And you made me go to my box of tissues again. Melanie Kennard, you were part of that crew in 2023 at Samoa. So are you there, Melanie?
I am.
You have the floor.
So I should kind of regretting not going before Zoe now. Because I'm a little bit more short and sweet and down to the basics and not quite as emotional in how I address things. I've also had a glass of wine, so if it gets loud, it's not your volume. So I guess I took my approach to Leanne as more of the person who's always chasing her. I first met Leanne about 14, 15 years ago. I was fairly new to outrigger paddling, or to OC1 anyways, and she was just newerish to BC. I'd heard about her, but I just hadn't seen her just yet. It was a small boat race in Vernon. I think we were probably 2 of 3 women on the start line, right? Not a lot of us there at the time. I had a good start, but sure enough, she beat me pretty handily in the end. And so I'm here, got my new OC1. I'm thinking, oh, this is okay. It's just the start of my paddling career. I've got all this time ahead of me. So I told myself, I'm going to beat that girl someday. And I am still waiting for that moment. And I have a strong suspicion I'm going to be waiting for a while. The thing with Leanne is she isn't just a talented paddler. She really is a paddling athlete. And being an athlete goes, beyond that skill, beyond that innate talent. It's about the hours that she dedicates to her training, the thought that she puts into her training plan, her nutrition, her equipment, and how she just analyzes one performance to make the next one even better. I remember once, I think it was in Calgary, when I raced with her for the first time at sprints, watching her take off her GPS and like actually looking at that data and being like, oh, I was weak in this chunk. And I was like, what the hell? Right? Like, this is a different level, right? Another time before a race, watching her wash and buff her canoe. And I'm like, oh shit, like I'm so out of my league here. This is just a level of commitment to the sport that I'm pretty sure is really rare, right? And I think it goes beyond the wanting something and just saying like, I want to do this thing, right? And saying like, this is my plan. It's like the actual like day-to-day executing that plan and actually doing what you're saying, right? And going through those motions and getting up early and doing all that hard work that makes her such an accomplished athlete. So, after 14 to 15 years where I still haven't beat her, I have to say I'm glad to be aging out of her category because I'll never relish racing against her. I am really grateful, however, for all the times I've had the opportunity to race with Leanne, most notably in Samoa. Those 5 women were amazing. And it's a special feeling to just have that, right? The power that Leanne brings to the boat aside, I don't think any of us doubt how strong she is. Like that's kind of a no-brainer. But there's just an incredible feeling of trust with Leanne, and just knowing that she's always going to be ready for the task. She's done the work. She's ready to race. She's ready to race her heart out for you and for the crew, and just being in a crew that's like that and just being like, all I have to do is me, because all these people have got my back, they've got each other's back, they're going to do the work. And that's the experience of Samoa for me, is not just Leanne, but the other women. It's just like, we're just here together and we're doing it. We can count on each other. And having somebody like Leanne in your boat is pretty special. Because she's friggin' strong, but also because of all the other stuff that comes along with that, right? And just knowing that she's not just strong, she's gonna last, she's prepared, it's gonna be amazing, and it was. So, I know this is pretty short and sweet, but I want to say that although I can't comment on how amazing her hockey career must have been for her to award her that cup or name a cup after her, like that's crazy. That like inducting her into the Hall of Fame is the very least we can do to recognize her athletic performance, her accomplishments, for what she's done already, what I'm sure she's going to go ahead and do from here on in.
I think we lost Mel.
Oh,
Or at least
I'm still here. It's short. Sorry.
you stopped talking. It was just threw me for a curve.
Yeah,
there.
sorry. I'm not a talker, right? So like the whole like this is very nerve-wracking.
Well, consider this Cora's opportunity for you to work on your public speaking skills.
Yes, thank you so much, Cora.
Are you wrapped?
I'm wrapped.
That's a wrap. Leanne Stanley, I can't believe that you're awake in Hong Kong right now because it's like 24 hours away. But do you want to say anything during your break from coaching?
It's 10 a.m. I'm awake. We're just finishing up our intros of our clinic here in Lama. So this is such an honor. Thank you so much, Zoe and Mel, for those kind words. It's been a great pleasure being in the canoe with both of you over the years, for sure. But yeah, as I'm definitely living the dream right now, it's nothing more than I could have ever asked for. Being able to travel around the world and share my love of paddling with others. Like I said, we've got a group of paddlers down there. Johnny and Andrea are just taking the group right now. Well, I'm chatting with you fine folks. But I love nothing more than sharing what's been paid forward to me and sending it forward. Zoe, you hit it on the head. Like people like Rick that have shared with me their knowledge and experience over the years. Like I wouldn't be where I am for today if not for gentlemen like him and other ladies like you yourself and Cheryl that have shared their knowledge and experience with me. So that's all I can ask, is that I can give some level of that to other paddlers around the world so that we can keep this sport growing and keep sharing that stoke. And thank you so much, Cora, for this honor. I really don't know. For once, I'm actually lost for words. Believe it or not. Those that know me, that's weird.
But Leanne, you just go knock them dead there in Hong Kong. Do what you do best.
Thanks all.
So we have one more inductee, and this is Len Morris Jr. And I think somewhere on that list of people up there, the whole Morris family is chiming in. I don't know how big that family is, but this is great that the family has come to this. So we thought we had 2 or 3 guest speakers. I'm not sure. Gordon Martinez from Molokai, 2019. Kikaha Okekai was going to speak. He's in Arizona at this time doing another dam race. And like I said, he wasn't sure if he could attend this session, but he took the time to do a very extensive write-up on the history of Kikaha Northwest over 6 years. And then the path he took to recruit 9 Pacific Northwest rock star paddlers, including Len Jr., for the Molokai Hoi 2019 silver medal crew. And so we were able to run the write-up by Gordon through some text-to-sound software so that we could play back the words of Gordon Martinez. And it is very difficult to find an artificial intelligence speaker who can actually pronounce Hawaiian words correctly. And Gordon Martinez has a commanding presence and he's an eloquent speaker. And I only hope that Gordon Martinez can find it in his heart to forgive me for making him sound like a British paddler. And after we play this video, this speech by Gordon, John Richardson, who was part of that Molokai 2019 crew, is going to come on and add his own words. So Eric, can you tee up that recording from this British paddler trying to pretend to be Gordon Martinez in his words?
Yep. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I'm
for
ready.
this? It's a little unusual, but here we go.
And it slipped my mind to respond early. Apologies for that. Here is a short history of Kikaha Northwest, comprised mostly of Kikaha and filled in with other fine paddlers from around the Pacific Northwest from Canada, Washington, and Oregon. As one of the lifetime directors for Kikaha Kukai Trigger Canoe Club, one of my goals was to put Kikaha on the map, so to speak, and to have our paddlers be recognized as true contenders from the Pacific Northwest. Team Kikaha Northwest was actually created back in 2012, where Kikaha formed 2 Molokai crews to compete in Molokai Ho. Same as 2019, back at that time in 2012, we had to recruit outside of Kikaha to fill in to complete full crews. And luckily, we were able to acquire good paddlers from Canada, Washington, and Oregon. I knew we had many first-timers crossing the channel. We were all game and fired up with no high expectations, and we all just wanted to test our paddling skills and gain experience. Sure enough, it lit the fire under a lot of them. And others continued the next few years in a row competing in the Kaiwi Channel with other crews the likes of Kayakaika and Team Cascadia. I was proud of the men who had provided their first opportunity and experience. At this point, I had already done 5 Molokai Ho races and decided I needed a break. 2017 Kikaha Northwest sent 6 true Kikaha paddlers to compete in Pailolo Channel Iron Race for 4th place Senior Master. We had the honor to race with the legendary Peter Marcus. I met Len Morris back in 2017 at the PN Worker Winter Series Championship, where I saw him paddle and race with great technique and performance. He won first place by at least a 2 to 3 minute margin. Not sure if he would remember meeting me back then, as I went to congratulate him and to say great job today. We went on just small talk where he was from and who he paddled for and stuff like that. My impression of him was soft-spoken and humble man. A very nice man. He shared he was from Geronimo Canoe Club of First Nations, native of Canada, family of paddlers over many generations. There at Geronimo, they would build canoes and paddles for their people. And knowledge was passed down by the elders, so the culture was preserved. He was honored to take over and perpetuate and lead the Geronimo family legacy of special paddlers from youth to adults. I admire the passion he has for his culture and outrigger paddling. In 2018, I was fortunate to join a fun open crew from PNW Hoahuia to compete in Molokai Ho. Soon after, I had the itch to pull together our own Kikaha Northwest crew to race in 2019 Molokai Ho. And this time to compete for hardware. As I do at every race, I like to keep a keen eye for talented paddlers around the Pacific Northwest. At the time of crew selection, I was short a few stroker seats that I needed to fill in the rotation. There were many to choose from, but Len Morris Jr. was my first in mind. The majority of everyone in our crew was 45 to 55 years old, and with our luck, Len had just turned 40 that year, so we were able to qualify for the Master 40 division. As a crew, we all made sacrifices to meet and train together when possible. John O. Saunders, steerer, Bob Fonts, Jacob Murray, and myself even drove up to Canada to meet Len and Ashley Paul James, also from Canada. For the first time, actually paddling together, we found our blend pretty quickly. Len and Ashley were 1 and 2 as strokers and pace setters, and were a perfect fit for our big guys in seat 3 and 4 and 5 to match their power. Len Morris was truly a team player and had great attitude. He had even driven to Seattle all the way from Victoria, Canada, to train with the rest of the 9-man crew. Len Morris Jr. truly made a huge impact to our success in paddler, was involved in pretty much all of our training and meeting all the paddlers, and I'm sure he can share some of his interactions about Len. Sorry that I won't be available on Saturday, November 11th, as I will be in Arizona doing another damn race. Thank you, John and Graham, for your time. Lenny is just an awesome brother.
So once again, Gordon Martinez, my apologies. It was the best I could do. Our next speaker is John Richardson, steersman extraordinaire, longtime friend, and someone I consider a steering mentor. John Richardson was the 10th man, and his son was the 11th man on that Molokai Ho'i 2019 silver medal crew. And John Richardson has agreed to share some of his and quite a few of the crew members from 2019 thoughts on Len Jr. So, John Richardson, you have the floor. Thank you,
Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
I want to speak and thank you for giving me the time. Let me see if I want to share my screen, hopefully.
You look like you're in a great place in the world right there.
It's a cool little park. If you ever get to go there, they film a lot of like Jurassic Park and Jumanji. I guess I can't share screen. I had some photos, but hold on a second. Let me get set up here. Aloha everybody. To our paddling ohana, and special greetings to Len, his wife Ashley, who I got to meet on Molokai back in 2019, and his entire family. I'm John Richardson, and I'm really honored to be here recognizing Len and wholeheartedly supporting his induction to the CORA Hall of Fame. I'd also like to extend my gratitude for CORA for making this recognition possible. P&W indeed should follow suit, as I live down here in Washington. Just a little bit about me and why I'm here. My son, Keala Richardson, and I had the privilege of serving as boat coaches in Len's 2019 Molokai Hoi, and also the Pacific Northwest change-out race in Seattle, and working closely with Gordon Martinez, who's originally from Kaneohe, Hawaii. Being with Len was an awesome experience for us. We currently reside in Washington State, and my roots are deeply embedded in Hawaii and originally from Oahu, and I proudly paddle and lead Kikaha Okekai Canoe Club in Tacoma, Washington. Now, building on what we've already heard from Gordon's recording, I wanted to share some additional insights that I've gathered. And beyond my personal experiences with Len, I'm really eager to share the comments from Len's fellow paddlers in 2 extraordinary crews. But before we delve into those crew reflections, let me provide some context to some of these race examples. In 2019, the Pacific Northwest change-out race, the crew that Len had stroked, and the first time he had been with us, this crew finished first place overall after overcoming a 3rd place position for half of the race. They displayed an amazing blend and skill that moved him into first place, and Len was our stroker at the time. And he was set up with other crew members such as Bo Whitehead, Eric Scharfenberg, Jono Saunders, Gordon, Jason Park, many of these that are from the north part of Washington, that some of these you may be familiar with. And this is a significant win, was because they won the race in a Bradley canoe with Len stroking that was powerful and smooth. And what made it even more significant was the 2nd and 3rd place crews were in an unlimited canoe. So this is well deserved. The second race that I'll most talk about is a 2019 Molokai Hoi Masters Division. So in this race, there were 89 entries in the Masters Division. First place was a Tahitian crew. 2nd place was Kikaha Northwest. And 3rd through 6th Masters were all from Oahu. So this is pretty significant for us, as Gordon reflected in his comments. In that crew, we had Len, Ashley James that came from Canada, Eric, Jono Saunders, Gordon Martinez, and others. Now I want to share some comments that I was able to gather from some of the crew. First, my son Keala, I spoke with him, and what he remembers was a time we all spent together on Molokai. And during our preparation at Kuala Pu'u Ranch on Molokai, when we did prayers and chants one evening, we did visualization and mindfulness exercises. And Keala had this experience that was nothing short of spectacular. The connection with our spirituality, coupled with chants that echoed through the air, created a very profound atmosphere. He specifically mentioned the powerful confirmation we all felt as during our prayers and chants, how the wind transitioned from silence to gusting winds, a real moment that left a lasting impression on him and all of us. Bob Fontes, our 3 and 4 position person, said, Paddling with you, Len, was truly enjoyable. The diversity of paddlers that we had from Canada, Washington, Oregon in this crew added a unique and very fun dynamic. We put in a lot of effort driving to practices together, working on that perfect crew blend. Hanging out in Hawaii was a blast. And what set us apart was the wealth of experience that Len brought to the crew. It made a big difference, and I'm grateful to have paddled with him. Jono Sanders, our esteemed steersman, he remembered that 2019 crew and Len is that the crew had an amazing build up to that race, and they prepped well. When Jono looks back, he remembers everyone being relaxed. They didn't have any unrealistic expectations. No one complained. Everyone was positive. Everyone put out. And the Molokai Channel conditions were ideal. When they finished the race, they didn't know how they had done, but it didn't matter. They just had a lot of fun. But then they were surprised to hear that they'd taken second in the Masters category, with the Tahitian crew in first, and 4 other Hawaiian crews, as I mentioned, just minutes behind them. Jono said he had been paddling since he was 13. He grew up in Fiji, lived on Oahu, lived in Washington. Now he's back on Oahu, and he's raced Molokai 6 times. And the 2019 season that ended with Len was the best season ever. He said he would paddle with any one of the boys again, and especially loves the commitment that Len has given to the sport and in keeping it alive, which takes years to build. And finally, Eric Scharfenberg, an elite OC1 paddler who lives in Portland, Oregon, and competed in 4 Molokai races. He said, many of us didn't know Len, but he was noticing his OC1 results were amazing. Eric said he was like, who is this guy that's beating these fast dudes? Eric had never raced against Len, but once he paddled with him, he quickly learned that Len was super nice, a humble guy. Eric also wanted to pass along these 2 stories. The first, during the Molokai race, Eric said that one of the successes to their crew were their water changes. Everyone was having solid water changes, and he always prided himself on never missing a change. Well, doing this race, he was lined up in the water and ready to get in the canoe. Then all of a sudden, the canoe shifted away from him, and then he got lined up with the ama barreling right towards him, and it was coming right at him where he had to duck under the ama. And he thought, oh no, I'm going to miss my change. Right at that moment, Len stuck out his paddle for Eric to grab, and then Len pulled him to the canoe, which then Eric was able to grab and get in. Len, I don't know if you remember that, but your quick thinking saved the day, or who knows, may have saved minutes that could have lost, that could have maybe given up some of the position that you had on the other crews. So Len, great reaction there. The second story that Eric told me was he initially turned down Gordon's offer to join the crew, and we had paddled with Eric before. He had work to deal with. He had family matters to take care of, which obviously many of us do. And he just didn't think he could pull off another channel race. Then Ashley James caught up with Eric at the 2019 Gorge race. And I don't know if Ashley is on this call, but if I get any of this wrong, please correct me. I haven't coordinated this with Ashley, but what Eric said was, Eric tells me that Ashley approached him and said, hey, Eric, you got to get in on this crew. Kikaha has been doing well this season, and now they added Len Morris to the crew. And Eric said, what? Len Morris? And at that point, Eric went home, talked to his family, contacted Gordon, and said he was in for the race. So Eric said, so Len, through your spirit, your humbleness, and of course, results in the water, you got Eric to join the crew. And that ends it for me.
John, I'm stunned. You told me you were just going to pull together a few tidbits. This was fantastic. We're going to record that. We're going to play that back for the PNW Orca History Archives. You're a good man, John. Thank you for doing all that hard work.
Yeah, I'm honored to speak with this distinguished community.
Now you're making us feel humble. We have one more speaker, and that's Rita Morris. Len Morris, I hope you're there. I really hope you're there, because we really wanted to bring some people to the table that you knew and you could speak highly of you. Rita Morris, would you care to share some words on behalf of your son?
Sorry about this. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation from Graham and Eric and organizers. My name is Rita. I'm Len Morris Jr.'s mom. We are, first of all, I have to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be able to speak on his behalf. You may hope, and I totally appreciate hearing especially from John, the kind and generous thoughts from friends on Len's behalf as well. I did have to write some of this down so that, like, I may not be able to speak past sort of like the lump in my throat, because I haven't had the chance, like others, to speak publicly. I'm not much of a public speaker, but I also wanted to say thank you to the uncle from Hawaii for sharing the beautiful song, the tribute to the the cultural tribute. I think that's really really valuable. I want to say first and foremost, congratulations to all the other inductees. Really absolutely beautiful tribute to Norm. Really heartfelt how wonderful that was. And really just going on, it's with really great humility and tremendous pride that I put into words some insight into Len. And like Zoe was saying earlier, I'm more like that. I'm probably not going to follow the timeline. And I also want to appreciate that we've been here for a couple of hours now, and people are probably wanting to get on with their evenings as well. But there are, among Len's achievements, I'm sure you'll find them on the, there are various sites that you can find them. As we're, some of you might already know, some of you that know Len here on the West Coast, we are from the Husainich families here on Vancouver Island. And Len, the youngest of three brothers, he has Will and Gus older than him, and his sister Lindsay. You almost can't mention one without the other, because we're really quite a close-knit little family and community here. Len grew up he met the legacy. He grew up into the legacy of being called a beach kid. That was a handle that came from his dad's generation. Like they all grew up being called beach kids, and that sort of carried on as our kids grew up in that. Let me see. He has always been really competitive. I guess, he grew up playing, of course, field sports like lacrosse and soccer and those kinds of things. And already then he was, as a young kid, he was always on someone else's radar, somebody to watch. And he developed a lot of his leadership skills amongst his friends and his peers. I really kind of believe that he began his, no, I better step back a little bit, because as little kids, when we were racing, we're the generation of the Geronimo Canoe Club. We started out with my late in-laws, really beautiful traditional elders who really taught us well about carrying on the sport of paddling and how valuable that is in our communities. And it just marries so nicely with all of the coastal community and the water people, the saltwater people, really. And I totally relate to the uncle from Hawaii and the carrying on of the culture. Really, with Len being involved in outrigger paddling, I think that even may have started way back when he was just a little guy. And, you know, when we were younger, and Leonard Sr. and his brothers and his crew went to Molokai the first time, that was a lifetime ago. And it's still, we were able to carry on and keep that excitement, enthusiasm that comes from being in the water with our kids. And I kind of feel like, without even knowing it, Len, he really did put our little village onto the map through our Geronimo Canoe Club, and just with the continuation and the passion for paddling. And Len, you can tell the people that know him and that he's paddled with, know that he really does put his energy into being a traditional canoe paddler, as well as now an outrigger paddler. And even though there are different, I think that from my understanding, because I've never paddled on an outrigger canoe. I did paddle on our own canoes, but that's a whole different muscle, whole different style. A different athletic form. And Len's been able to paddle in our canoes, the traditional Coast Salish canoes. He's also tried dragon boat racing and the outrigger culture as well. And that, you know, I feel like that just really shows his willingness to try new things. He also does a lot of his own cultural, Len's also a canoe builder in our community. So he has taken the single and the 6-man canoes and from our culture and started crafting those as well. And now it's, you know, we're really, really proud to say that that's a skill that requires the same kinds of patience and discipline and insight into what is needed on the water. And he grew up around that culture as well. He's a craftsman, a canoe builder, a role model in our community. And I really think that he has influenced a lot of people in his own circle, including his brothers and family here on the coast. I do want to, I want to be able to say that he's just been such an inspiration to so many of our own small community members. And of course, I do want to be able to mention his wife, Ashley, and the beautiful children that he has gifted us as grandparents and family members. Some of you may know that when Len went to England, when they went to London to compete there, his son Jasper and his daughter Cora went along with them, and they competed as well. So you can tell that the passion for paddling and competing and training and all of this lifestyle that CORA has, Len has grown up in as well. Knowing full well that, knowing too that canoe pulling was his start. We had the cutest, the best image of Len in my head of, you know, we were paddling, but when he was just a little guy, they were just little guys, and they were on the beach, and they would pull up any log and any stick, and they would be playing canoe paddling and canoe racing on the beach. And who knew that, you know, he would one day grow up and be an international paddler who's gone to so many spots and places in the world, and making the name for himself. Really, I wouldn't have guessed that a long time ago, even though, you know, as parents, we want greater things for our children than we ever had. I do want to say that, you know, we know that his grandparents, they're gone now, but we always believe that they're with us wherever we go. They're probably up there smiling now and just nodding their heads and just saying, yeah, you know, just keeps us humble in many ways to know that we have someone watching over us all the time. I wanted to keep this quite brief, actually, but I wanted to say we appreciate the honor and recognition that this award brings. And I'll echo the words of his niece when she said, he was already in my Hall of Fame. Need we say it more? Right. But yeah, I think I'd like to stop there, just because I think beautiful words have already been spoken. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rita. And just so you know, we have never done one of these Hall of Fame sessions in 90 minutes. We always set 90 minutes aside, but it always goes on. There's just so many great stories. People have so much to share. It's good to hear. Do not apologize for keeping this thing going. We're all good with this. So, Len Morris.
Yeah, hey, I'm here. I'm all here.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for allowing us to have your mom speak on your behalf. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks for the wonderful words, John. Gord, all the Kaikaha Ohana down there. I'm very honored. Congratulations to the other inductees. It's been quite the experience. You know, just I'm very grateful. I'm beyond grateful to be being inducted into the Hall of Fame and to go in with such a you know, an awesome group and before, and you know, there's more coming as well. So yeah, thank you.
You are a man of few words, Len.
Yeah, I've been told that.
It's nice to see you on the start line, and we're both in V1s. I'm just going to know that you're going to finish miles ahead of everybody, and that's how it is. Thank you very much for sharing all of your stories and helping us collect this history. If anybody is still there in our audience and you want to throw a question in the chat, or somebody wants to say anything, we'll leave the floor open for a few more minutes, and then we'll call it a day.
And Graham, just for the purpose of the recording and for everyone still here in the audience, their recording will be made available online in a couple of days. So probably the day after tomorrow, it should be ready. And it'll be part of the Hall of Fame archive. And certainly I would encourage you to visit the Hall of Fame archive and take a look at all of these fantastic discussions over the last couple of years. So thanks, everyone. There are a few, there's one hand up. The Morris clan has a hand up. And Andrea has a hand up.
Yeah, I can't see that. So
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Morris clan.
Morris clan, yeah. This is William, the Williams. My son and I are both here. My daughter was here, Hannah, that one my mom just quoted. So I'm William Morris. Len's my youngest brother. We're super proud. Len is absolutely a man of few words, to the point where if we miss one of his races and we ask him how it went, we just get the oh, it was good. It was fun. Yeah, it was kind of rough, and I won. The words that I wanted to share is something that I heard quite some time ago when one of my brother's friends had passed, and how he shared his friend's passion for paddling. And the words that came out were, paddling isn't just what I do, it's who I am. And I really believe that my brother lives that through everything that he does. He's not only gonna race you on the water, probably beat you, but he's probably gonna build the paddle and the canoe for both of you to do it. So we're super proud of my brother Len. He's laid the foundation and path, and he's carried on a torch from our grandparents and our parents' generation onto his children, nieces and nephews. Just this past summer, my son was able to experience some of that, going along the men's crew in our own war canoe circuit, and he's 14 years old. So the torch is being passed, and I'm super proud of the accomplishments throughout the world. My son traveled recently to New Zealand, and Geronimo Canoe Club had roots there. I think of Hawaii, Australia, New Zealand, England, Tahiti, California, Washington State, all these places my brother and the family has put down some roots, and it makes me really proud. And as mom shared, and I know my dad and brother are both on the call, nieces, nephews. We're super proud of Len, and we're so grateful for this induction ceremony. I don't know if Brother Len wants to talk about how he got a little bit stage fright a couple weeks back at a Creedence Clearwater Revival tribute. They actually brought him on stage for that one to congratulate him on this particular day as well. So it definitely has reverberating effects, and we're definitely feeling that the spirit and strength of my brother and the growth of this sport due to his passion and love for paddling. So that's all I wanted to share. Hauska Hela Siem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William. Andrea.
Yep, we now have Andrea. Go ahead, Andrea.
I'll be quick, but one of the things I forgot, and the Morris clan, you certainly spoke to it, is the legacy. And this is to Heather Taylor as well. And Ruth's daughters are rowing Olympians, and her granddaughter, Kaylee Filmer, combined with Piper Battersby, who happens to be Heather Taylor's niece. Those two just won the nationals in pairs. So that legacy continues, and we know that rowers will see the light, turn around, and join us.
Hoorah. Anything else out there from the audience, from our town hall committee you'd like to say? Ron Chin usually comes up and says a whole bunch of stuff, but he's basking in the sun in Hawaii right now. So, Eric?
Just a quick note, the CORA AGM is coming up at the end of the month. So if you are CORA members, you're more than welcome to attend. You're encouraged to attend. And please enjoy this emerging archive of stories on the CORA website, for which all of the inductees today play an integral part. So I think look forward to the recording a couple of days from now, and everyone else have a great Sunday evening. Thank you, Graham, for all your work on this, and for the rest of you, have a great night.
Thank you, Eric. Have a good night.